Remember Tornado Cash? That crypto mixer?
Yes.
The one the US Treasury sanctioned?
Right. Because of the whole North Korea money laundering thing?
Well, get this. A federal appeals court just kind of flipped the script on the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
And we're going to try to unpack it all today. We're diving into 3 articles from Decrypt, Crypto News, and The Block
Sounds like a good lineup.
to try to get to the bottom of what happened, why it's a big deal,
Yeah.
and what it might mean for the future of privacy in crypto, right?
Big implications.
So, okay, before we even get into the legal nitty-gritty, can we just kind of recap what Tornado Cash even is? For anyone listening who maybe isn't, super deep in the crypto weeds?
Sure. So Tornado Cash is what's called a crypto mixer.
Okay.
Basically, it's a tool that people can use to obscure where their cryptocurrency transactions come from.
What is it? Like a digital money laundering service?
Kinda. Yeah, I mean, it makes it really hard to track where funds are coming from or going to.
So are there legitimate reasons someone might want to use that?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, some people might just want to keep their financial activity private, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for safety reasons or to protect themselves from hackers or whatever.
Right.
But anytime you have anything that offers that level of anonymity, there's always the potential for misuse, right?
That's the trade-off.
Exactly.
And that's where I guess the North Korean connection comes in, right?
Yeah. So the US Treasury Department basically alleged that North Korean hackers, specifically this group called the Lazarus Group,
Right.
were using Tornado Cash to launder hundreds of millions of dollars that they had stolen in various cyber attacks.
Oh, wow.
I mean, obviously that raised some serious red flags.
Yeah, I bet.
About national security and financial crime and all that.
So that's what led to the initial sanctions back in August of 2022.
Exactly. The Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC,
Okay.
they basically designated Tornado Cash as a sanctioned entity.
Meaning?
No U.S. person or company could legally use it.
Oh, wow.
They actually went so far as to blacklist specific Ethereum addresses associated with the platform.
So they were serious.
Yeah, they weren't messing around.
Yeah.
I mean, this was like one of the most aggressive moves we'd seen from the government against a decentralized platform.
Okay, so then how did this lawsuit even come about?
Well, a group of 6 Tornado Cash users, led by a guy named Joseph Van Loon,
Okay.
they were obviously not thrilled about the sanctions and decided to challenge them in court.
Jesus.
Their core argument was that Tornado Cash, at its heart, is just software.
Okay.
It's a set of what are called immutable smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain.
Immutable meaning?
Meaning unchangeable, right? Once those contracts are deployed, nobody, not even the original developers, can alter them or control them.
I see.
So their argument was basically, you can't sanction software. Like, it's not a person or an entity in the traditional legal sense.
You can't sanction code, basically.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Like a pretty bold argument. And to be honest, it didn't work at first.
It didn't?
No, they lost the case in a lower district court back in August of this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What happened there? Why'd they lose?
Well, the judge in that district court ruled that even though Tornado Cash was built on this decentralized tech, it still acted like an entity because of the involvement of the founders, the developers, and the Decentralized Autonomous Organization, or DAO.
DAO.
Yeah, that was overseeing some parts of the platform.
Okay. Can you unpack that a little bit? A DAO?
Yeah, sure. A DAO is basically like a community-governed entity that uses smart contracts to make decisions.
Interesting.
So the judge basically saw enough human involvement in that whole setup to consider it sanctionable.
Okay, interesting. So round 1 went to the government.
Yep.
But then they appealed.
They did, and that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals took a very different view and ended up siding with the plaintiffs,
Wow.
overturning those sanctions.
So a huge turnaround.
Huge.
Yeah, what was their reasoning?
So their reasoning was super fascinating. They basically argued that these immutable smart contracts, they just don't meet the legal definition of property.
Okay.
Like, you can't really own or control them in the usual way, so the government can't just sanction them like they would a house or a bank account.
Interesting.
Right.
So the government can't seize something that doesn't belong to anyone.
That's kind of the gist of it, yeah.
Oh.
But the government also tried to argue that Tornado Cash was providing a service, something they could regulate, right? The court wasn't buying it.
Okay.
They basically said that these automated protocols like Tornado Cash, which operate purely on code without any human involvement, those don't count as services legally.
Interesting.
Because legally speaking, a service requires some kind of human action
So essentially the court was saying this is totally new territory and our laws just aren't equipped to handle it.
Exactly.
But what does this actually mean for Tornado Cash then? Are the sanctions like completely gone?
It's a little more nuanced than that. So the ruling specifically lifts the sanctions from the underlying immutable smart contracts themselves that make up Tornado Cash.
Okay.
However, that broader designation of Tornado Cash as a sanctioned entity and the blocking of associated assets, that's still in place.
I see.
So it's kind of a partial win, but it's a pretty big win.
Yeah.
And the case is actually now headed back to the district court to figure out, what happens next.
I bet this has sent shockwaves through the crypto world.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at the price of Tornado Cash's governance token.
Right.
It shot up over 870% after the news broke.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's currently sitting around $16.70, according to CoinGecko.
Okay, so people are excited about this ruling.
Yeah, very excited.
How have, industry leaders reacted to this?
Mostly positive, especially among those who are big on privacy and decentralization.
Makes sense.
Coinbase's chief legal officer, Paul Grewal, called it a historic win for crypto.
I can see why he'd say that.
And I think a lot of people share that sentiment.
What about Bill Hughes, the lawyer from Consensus? Didn't he have some interesting thoughts about this?
Oh, yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He pointed out that it's very unlikely the Supreme Court will even bother to try and reverse this decision.
Oh, wow.
Which means this case could really fundamentally change how the U.S. legal system interacts with decentralized tech going forward.
That's a big deal.
Huge.
Yeah. Okay, so this is obviously a major development, but
Sure.
let's not forget, the other side of this, right? Tornado Cash was, and arguably still is, being used for money laundering, right, and other illegal activities. So doesn't this ruling make it harder to stop those criminals who are using the platform?
I mean, that's a valid concern for sure.
Yeah.
There's definitely a tension there between this legitimate need for privacy in crypto and the potential for bad actors to misuse tools like this, right?
Right.
So this ruling does kind of open the door for more privacy-focused tools, but it also raises questions about, how to prevent those tools from becoming havens for criminal activity.
It's a tough one.
It is.
Yeah. So what's next? These specific immutable contracts are protected.
Right.
But the platform itself isn't totally off the hook, right?
Yeah.
How does that affect future development in the space?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
This ruling only applies to these specific self-executing contracts.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily extend to, say, a forked version of Tornado Cash that might have some level of admin control built in.
A fork being?
A fork is basically a copy of the original code that's been modified
Oh.
or tweaked.
Okay.
So this ruling creates a very interesting puzzle for developers who are building privacy tools, right?
Yeah.
Do they try to stay within these new boundaries by creating truly immutable systems? Or do they find ways to maintain some control,
Right.
which could make them more vulnerable to government intervention?
So it's like this legal and ethical minefield you're stepping into.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this case so important. It's not just about this one privacy tool. It's forcing us to fundamentally rethink how we regulate something that exists purely in the digital realm.
Right.
Something that doesn't fit neatly into our existing ideas about ownership and control.
We've covered a lot, but this is clearly just the beginning of the story. Right?
Oh, definitely just the tip of the iceberg.
We'll be back in a moment to dive even deeper into what all of this means.
Absolutely.
So stay with us.
So welcome back. Let's kind of shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about what this ruling could mean for the broader crypto world, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about Tornado Cash. It's about
Right.
setting a precedent for how all these decentralized technologies are viewed by the U.S. legal system.
It's like a domino effect almost, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This could have implications for other protocols, DeFi platforms, DAOs, anything that uses this kind of autonomous code-driven functionality.
For sure. And I think that's why everyone is paying so much attention. I mean, the court basically said these immutable smart contracts, they're not property in the traditional sense.
Right.
So it opens up this whole can of worms about what it even means to regulate something
Yeah.
that only exists digitally,
It's
right?
like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, right?
Exactly.
Our laws were written for physical assets,
Yeah.
centralized companies,
Right.
not this weird decentralized code world.
Yeah, it's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And that's why that comment from Judge Willett about Congress needing to update the law is so important.
Oh, right. Right.
He's basically saying, hey, the tech has outpaced our legal framework.
Catch up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need new tools to deal with these unique challenges and
Yeah.
opportunities that this tech presents.
So it's a wake-up call to lawmakers.
Big time.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a ton of debate in the coming months and years
I bet.
about how to strike that right balance. So
Yeah.
encourage innovation into crypto
Right.
while also mitigating the risks of money laundering and all that.
It's a tough balancing act.
It is, for sure.
Yeah.
But maybe, maybe this legal battle will spark some productive conversations
Yeah, maybe so.
and lead to more clarity and certainty for the industry as a whole.
That would be nice.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Okay, so zooming out a bit here.
Sure.
What does this ruling tell us about the state of crypto regulation globally?
I mean, I think it shows that governments everywhere are grappling with this, right?
Yeah.
With how to approach this rapidly evolving tech.
Right.
Some countries are taking a more hands-off approach.
Mm-hmm.
They see crypto as this potential engine for economic growth.
Okay.
Others are cracking down, worried about financial stability, consumer protection, national security, all that.
So it's kind of the Wild West still out there.
A little bit, yeah. Every country's kind of doing its own thing.
Yeah.
And that creates its own set of challenges, right?
Yeah.
For crypto businesses, for users trying to navigate this patchwork of regulations.
Talk about a compliance nightmare.
Yeah, exactly.
Where do you think things are headed? Do you think we'll ever see a unified global approach to crypto regulation?
It's tough to say for sure.
Yeah.
But I do think we're going to see more collaboration
Okay.
between countries
Mm-hmm.
as they try to figure out how to address these cross-border issues.
Right, because crypto doesn't really care about borders, does it?
Not at all.
No.
It's inherently global, right?
All right.
And so that means regulators will have to work together if they
Mhm.
want to manage the risks,
Mm-hmm.
but also, potentially capitalize on all the benefits that crypto offers.
Okay, so we've talked about the legal stuff, the regulatory stuff.
Yeah.
What about the ethical implications of all this?
Oh, right.
I mean, this case really forces us to think about some fundamental questions, right?
It does.
About privacy, security, the role of technology in our lives, all that.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
these questions go way beyond just crypto.
Yeah.
They're about fundamental human rights and these societal values that are constantly being reshaped in
Yeah.
this digital age.
Right. I mean, the desire for privacy is kind of ingrained in us, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's part of human nature.
It is.
But so is the need for security and accountability, right?
Yeah.
So how do we balance these competing needs
Right.
in a world where technology is constantly kind of blurring all the lines?
That is the million-dollar question.
It is.
I think the answer is going to involve a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
We need to have open and honest conversations about the trade-offs,
Mm-hmm.
the potential benefits, and the risks of these new technologies.
Right.
And really the values that we want to prioritize as a society.
And those conversations need to include everybody, right?
Absolutely.
Not just like the techies and the lawmakers, but like everyday people who are affected by all this.
Everyone. It
Yeah.
needs to be inclusive, participatory,
Yeah.
a new way of approaching technology governance,
I like that.
one that really considers all these different perspectives and needs.
Okay, so bringing this back to our listener, right? Why should they care about this whole Tornado Cash story?
I mean, this case is a perfect example of this much larger trend that's happening that's
Yeah.
affecting all of us.
Yeah.
Technology is changing everything, the way we live, the way we work,
Mm-hmm.
how we interact with the world, and the law is struggling to keep up.
Big time.
So whether you're into crypto or not, this case highlights that we all have a role to play
Yeah.
in shaping the future of tech.
Right.
We need to be informed, engaged, and willing to ask these tough questions
Yeah.
about what these advancements mean for us as a society.
Because this isn't just happening in some like abstract digital world.
Right.
It's having real world effects.
Right. Real-world consequences.
Good and bad.
For sure.
Yeah.
So it's up to us to decide what kind of future we want to build.
I like that.
Before we move on to the last part of our deep dive here,
Okay.
I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question to kind of chew on.
Okay. Hit me. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our Tornado Cash deep dive.
All right, we talked about the legal battle, the regulations, even some of the ethical questions.
Right.
But now for the big question,
Okay.
we've established that in this specific case, the court said the code itself wasn't property
Right.
that could be sanctioned.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of begs the question, if code isn't property, then what is it?
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
I mean, we tend to think of code as just like a set of instructions
Right.
for computers.
Right.
But when code is increasingly controlling financial transactions, how we interact with each other,
Yeah.
even physical infrastructure like traffic lights, power grids,
Yeah.
its legal and philosophical status starts to get a lot more complex.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
And that complexity is only going to increase, right?
For sure.
As things like AI, autonomous systems, all that become more common.
Absolutely.
It's like we're moving into this uncharted territory
Yeah.
where the lines between code, data, human action,
It all gets blurry.
it all gets blurry, yeah.
So if our current legal systems are kind of struggling to wrap their heads around this, what are the alternatives? Do we need to completely rethink how we think about things like ownership, control?
It's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
We need new frameworks
Right.
that can adapt to these technological advancements, but also still protect our fundamental rights and values.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this isn't just a conversation for the tech experts.
Right.
This is a conversation for everyone.
Yeah. We're all kind of writing the rules for this new world together, aren't we?
We are.
Yeah.
And the choices we make now, they're going to have a huge impact down the road.
So as we go about our day interacting with all this tech,
Yeah.
what role do we want code to play in shaping our future?
It's something to think about.
It is.
What limits do we need to set? How do we ensure that tech serves humanity?
Right. Not the other way around.
Exactly.
Yeah. These are big questions.
They are.
And then hopefully we'll keep thinking about them.
Yeah, this tornado cash case. It's just one piece of this much larger story that's unfolding.
Is.
So stay curious, stay informed, stay engaged.
Because ultimately the future of tech is up to all of us.
Couldn't have said it better